The vast chamber of the Grand Council hummed with the quiet conversations of dozens of species. High, vaulted ceilings disappeared into atmospheric mists that circulated near the top of the chamber, while holographic displays flickered across various stations. Ziktox shifted in his seat at the xenological recorder station, his skin rippling from blue to a faint purple as anticipation coursed through his sensory network. "Do you think they'll actually do anything?" Vorax asked, his 6 eye stalks swiveling to take in the gathering assembly. "The humans, I mean..." Zik's skin flickered a deeper blue, signaling curiosity. "That's what we're here to observe. 7 cycles isn't long enough to truly understand a species, especially one classified as Class 4, potential threat," Vorax noted, his eye stalks converging to focus on the 3 human delegates taking their seats at the designated Earth station. Zik adjusted his recording equipment, ensuring the sensors would capture every detail of the emergency session. "What I find most interesting is how consistently polite they've been since joining the Council. Their history suggests millennia of warfare, yet they present themselves with remarkable restraint. Perhaps because they evolved on that death planet of theirs," Vorax said with a shudder that rippled through his gelatinous form. 60% corrosive water surface, catastrophic weather patterns, and a cultural obsession with extinction scenarios. Did you analyze their entertainment archives? Filled with virus outbreaks, apocalyptic myths, and disaster simulations. Zik's skin pulsed a lighter blue, indicating amusement. "And yet they voluntarily swim in the corrosive water. For recreation." The chamber lights dimmed slightly, signaling the imminent start of proceedings. Delegates from across the galaxy settled into their designated areas, each species grouped according to physiological needs and diplomatic rank. Translation devices hummed to life, ensuring every utterance would be understood by all present. Zik focused his attention on the human delegation. Ambassador Dana Powell sat center, her expression carefully neutral, professional attire impeccable by human standards. To her right sat Commander Jack Foster, military liaison, his posture rigid and formal. On her left was Dr. Lowe, referred to as Dr. Mo by some species due to pronunciation difficulties, the cultural specialist whose research had helped facilitate Earth's integration into the Council. Across the chamber floor, the Haxan delegation commanded attention. Their imposing forms, encased in reinforced exoskeletons, radiated both physical strength and cultural arrogance. Representative Grow, their lead delegate, towered over most species present, his voice carrying a perpetual tone of disdain. "Session begins," announced High Counselor Dreza of the Paxian Collective, her melodious voice echoing through the chamber. "Today's emergency session addresses Haxan incursion into Sector 7, violating Treaty 5924 regarding protected developmental spaces." Grow's exoskeleton clicked as he shifted. "The Haxan Empire acknowledges deployment of mining vessels to the region. We did not await approval. The natural resources must be harvested for defensive weapon production." Ambassador Powell leaned forward slightly. "Counselor Dreza, I must note that under Treaty 59924, the Nakari system falls under Earth's protective jurisdiction. The Haxan mining equipment must be withdrawn immediately." Grow's expression, what little could be read through his rigid facial plates, shifted to one of contempt. "A newly emerged species, barely 7 cycles in Council membership, presumes to dictate terms to a 1,000-cycle empire?" Zik noticed Commander Foster's biometric readings changing. Elevated heart rate, increased pupil dilation, yet the human maintained his composed exterior. Fascinating, Zik thought, the contrast between internal state and external presentation. The treaty rights were properly transferred when Earth joined the Council. Powell continued, her voice remaining steady. This isn't about Earth's standing, but about upholding established Council protocols regarding developmental species protection. The Nakari are primitive. Grow dismissed with a wave of his armored appendage. They have no spaceflight capability, no strategic value. Our scans indicate rare mineral deposits crucial to our defense systems. Dr. Lau leaned toward Powell, whispering something that the ambassador nodded to before addressing the council again. We propose a compromise: limited extraction operations with strict environmental protections, and zero contact with the Nakari civilization. Gro's laughter, a harsh, grating sound, filled the chamber. A young species dares impose conditions on a 1,000-cycle empire? Earth is a cooled-down rock. We need not listen to your moral theories. Zik observed the subtle change in Powell's demeanor, a barely perceptible tightening around her eyes, a flicker of a temporal vein. His sensors detected an uptick in stress indicators across all 3 human delegates. Representative Gro, High Counselor Dreza interjected. This council operates on mutual respect. Earth's standing is equal to all members, regardless of their cosmic tenure. Equal, Gro scoffed. They are infants playing at diplomacy. Their world has barely recovered from their own self-inflicted wounds. Yet they presume to protect others. Has Earth sent a formal protest through proper channels? We have, Powell confirmed. 3 standard cycles ago, immediately upon detecting your mining vessels entering Nakari space. And received no response, Foster added, speaking for the first time. Zik noted the slight shift in his posture, shoulders minutely tensing, gaze hardening. Earth is nobody, Gro declared, leaning forward aggressively. Will you be silent now? The chamber fell quiet, attention rippling through the assembly. Zik's skin flushed deep purple with anticipation. Then Commander Foster stood. What humanity calls polite mode, he began, his voice surprisingly calm, is something we engage in because, well, simply because we feel we should. But when it no longer serves its purpose, politeness turns off. Zik's recording equipment hummed as he captured every nuance of this unexpected development. Our ancestors spent millennia learning how to communicate. Then, centuries preparing to defend against unnamed extraterrestrial threats. When we finally encountered the Council, we were actually disappointed by how peaceful everything was. But we decided to play nice. Gro and several Haxan delegates straightened, their armored plates clicking. Are you threatening our empire? Foster's expression remained neutral, but his eyes had taken on a coldness that Zik found simultaneously fascinating and alarming. I'm simply stating circumstances. Withdraw all vessels from Nakari space, not because the Council demands it, but because if you don't, we will be forced to turn off politeness. And believe me, no one wants to witness that. Zik's console pinged with an emergency alert. A data stream from a monitoring station in Sector 7 had just updated. With a swift motion, he routed the feed to the main holographic display at the center of the chamber. The chamber erupted in gasps and exclamations as the image materialized. 50 Earth warships surrounding 12 Haxan mining vessels. Weapon systems clearly powered and ready. Where did these come from? Demanded Xerax, the Krelian representative, speaking toward his own holographic window. Earth registered only 20 civilian vessels with the Council. The chamber descended into chaos. Haxan delegates backed away from their console. Many species began urgent private communications, and several Council security officers moved toward strategic positions. Ambassador Powell stood, her composure finally showing the faintest crack, not of fear, but of resolute determination. They are Earth's insurance policy, she explained, her voice cutting through the disorder. We registered our civilian diplomatic fleet with the Council. This is our actual navy, revealed only when we must defend ourselves or others under our protection. This is an outrage, Gro thundered. Deception! Council laws require full disclosure of military capabilities. Actually, Dr. Lowe interjected, Council Provision 3721 requires disclosure of military vessels actively engaged in Council space. These ships remained in Earth-controlled space until the Haxan incursion necessitated their deployment. High Counselor Dreza's voice boomed through the chamber. "Order! We will have order!" When the tumult subsided, she continued. "Representative Grow, what is the Haxan Empire's response to this development?" Grow's exoskeleton rattled with barely contained rage. "The displacement cannons! We need the ore for weapons deployment!" A sudden commotion erupted from within the Haxan delegation itself. An older Haxan pushed forward, their exoskeleton bearing the distinctive markings of a scientific caste rather than a warrior. "I am Xanthor, Imperial Haxan Science Division," the newcomer announced. "All displacement cannon research was recalled 50 cycles ago by royal decree. Listen to me. Grow has no authority to deploy them to active service." The Haxan delegation fractured into competing voices, clearly divided. Many were backing away from Grow, who stood isolated as the implications became clear. He represented a rebel faction, pursuing a forbidden weapons program. Dr. Lowe tapped at her console, and new evidence appeared on the holographic display. Chemical analyses of radioactive minerals and transcripts of Haxan communications regarding banned weapon components. "The evidence indicates," Lowe explained, "that Representative Grow's faction has been purchasing radioactive materials consistent with displacement cannon development, explicitly forbidden under Treaty 8942. Grow attempted to protest, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. Many of his delegation had already distanced themselves, turning internal Haxan conflict into public accusation. "This is a severe violation," High Counselor Dreza declared. "The Council will require the presence of the Haxan Imperial Ambassador to address these allegations." Security officers approached Grow, who stood rigid with fury as he was escorted from the chamber. A smattering of applause, mixed with murmurs of astonishment, rippled through the assembly. Zik's skin had shifted to a bright orange of focused analysis. This unprecedented turn of events would require careful documentation. Beside him, Vorax's eye stalks whirled in continuous motion, trying to capture every reaction across the chamber. In the days that followed, the Council deliberated extensively. For the first time, humans were granted enforcement protection rights for developing civilizations, establishing what quickly became known as the Powell Doctrine. This allowed minimal non-engagement installations to ensure security. Many species debated the implications. "The humans moved too quickly, with too much force," argued the Talarian ambassador. "They responded precisely as needed," countered the Moldovan representative. "Protection policies have been theoretical for too long." Zik continued his observations, particularly intrigued when Xanthor approached Ambassador Powell after one session. "Your intervention exposed a dangerous faction within our empire," the Haxan scientist acknowledged. "We stand at a crossroads. Thanks to you, we have an opportunity for internal cleansing." Powell's response was diplomatic yet firm. "Earth seeks peaceful relations with all council members, including a legitimate Haxan government adhering to treaty obligations." Later, Zik managed to intercept encrypted communications from Earth's embassy, learning of a private meeting between Powell, Foster, Commander Lowe, and several senior advisors. "The Nikari Prime installation will be completed within 3 cycles," reported Admiral Helen Wu via secure channel. "Minimal interference protocols are in place." "And our weapons capabilities?" Powell inquired. "Still largely unknown to the Council," Foster confirmed. "The question remains, do we disclose everything now as a show of good faith, or maintain strategic ambiguity?" Powell's sigh was audible, even through the encryption. "Strategic ambiguity has served us well. For now, we continue to be transparent about our intentions, while measured about our capabilities." Zik found himself increasingly drawn to understanding humanity's paradoxical nature. He and Vorax spent long hours analyzing the binary channel data from Earth's embassy, noting the resolute attitude beneath the diplomatic veneer. Do they truly want peace, or are they merely waiting to assert dominance? Vorax wondered aloud during one late session. Zik's skin rippled thoughtfully. They choose peace, but haven't forgotten how to fight. That's what makes them dangerous. They know how to destroy, but choose not to. The final council decree came 3 cycles later. High Counselor Dreza announced, "The Haxan Empire must comply with council decisions. Gro's faction will face imperial investigation. The Powell Doctrine shall apply to all newly encountered civilizations, allowing observation installations while prohibiting interference with internal development, except in cases of direct threat." Zik finalized his report, recommending Earth's threat classification be downgraded and redesignated as potential guardian. He included extensive notes on the human concept of polite mode and its implications for interspecies relations. "I've never seen a species that combines courtesy and armed capability so effectively," Vorax admitted as they reviewed the findings. Through secret communications, the Nakari reached out to Earth's embassy, expressing gratitude. They viewed the Sky Guardians as protective deities. Imagery showed Nakari festivals under their 3 suns, building monuments to the Earth people, venerating them in mythology. Standing at the Grand Council Chamber's viewport, Zik gazed at the magnificent sweep of the galaxy. Countless powers still uncertain about humanity's true nature. His final thought, recorded for posterity: humanity remains an unsolved equation. But if they choose to protect rather than destroy, perhaps the Council universe can rest somewhat easier. The first holographic briefing at Earth's embassy after the emergency session buzzed with energy. Ambassador Powell sat at the head of the table, flanked by Commander Foster and Dr. Lau, facing a dozen senior staff members. "Admiral Wu reports the Haxan vessels have withdrawn completely from Nakari space," Foster announced, gesturing to the tactical display. "Our fleet remains in standard defensive formation." Powell nodded. "The Council's reaction exceeded our projections. We've gained significant diplomatic leverage. And created some anxiety," Dr. Liu added, scrolling through her datapad. 17 species have requested private audiences to discuss Earth's integration priorities. Translation: "They want to ensure we're not planning to take over," Powell said with a wry smile. "Schedule them all. Priority to founding council members." Foster leaned forward. "We should discuss the deployment calculus. Revealing our military capabilities was a calculated risk." "A necessary one," Powell countered. "The Haxan needed to understand our commitment to protection treaties. Words alone wouldn't suffice." "The question remains," Lowe interjected. "How much more should we reveal? We've shown perhaps 20% of our actual capability." Powell's expression turned thoughtful. "Nothing more for now. Let them wonder." Meanwhile, across the station, Zik-Tox's skin flickered between analytical orange and contemplative blue as he compiled his observations. His quarters were modest by council standards, but contained sophisticated equipment that allowed him to process vast amounts of data. "Access denied," flashed his console, as he attempted to probe deeper into Earth's military records. "Expected," he murmured to himself, "but revealing." Vorax entered, eye stalks immediately focusing on Zik's work. "The Council is in upheaval. 3 founding species have called for a complete audit of military capabilities for all members." "Which Earth will politely decline," Zik noted, his skin rippling with amusement. "The Haxan Imperial Ambassador arrived an hour ago," Vorax continued, "already distancing the Empire from Gro's faction, claiming they were rogue elements, acting without authority." "Convenient," Zik observed, "but potentially true, given Xanthor's intervention." "What fascinates me," Vorax said, settling his gelatinous form onto a support structure, "is how humanity planned this. They positioned their fleet before the emergency session even began, suggesting they anticipated both the Haxan response and the Council's inability to enforce the treaty without demonstration of power." Zik agreed, his skin deepening to analytical orange. "I've been researching their history further," Vorax continued. "Did you know they spent centuries fighting among themselves before achieving global unification? Their world wars were catastrophic by any standard. Perhaps that's precisely why they value diplomacy now, Zik suggested. They've experienced the alternative firsthand. On Nakari Prime, oblivious to the galactic politics swirling around them, the indigenous population gathered for their seasonal equinox celebration. Under the light of their three suns, tribal leaders pointed to the sky where, days earlier, unfamiliar lights had appeared, then vanished. "The Sky Guardians watch over us," declared Elder Taven, her forearms raised in ceremonial blessing. "They have driven away the Dark Devourers." The tribal assembly chanted in response, their collective voice carrying across valleys where new stone monuments were already being constructed, crude representations of Earth vessels, becoming part of their evolving mythology. Back in council space, Grow sat in a detention chamber, his exoskeleton partially deactivated as a security measure. The once proud representative stared at the wall, calculating his remaining options. The Imperial investigation would undoubtedly expose the full extent of his faction's activities, not merely the displacement cannons, but the planned biological agents for Nakari subjugation. "Visitor approved," announced the chamber's automated system as Xanthar entered. "You've destroyed everything we worked toward," Grow hissed. Xanthar's scientific exoskeleton whirred softly. "No, Grow. You destroyed it when you chose to violate Imperial decree. The displacement technology was banned because it destabilizes spatial integrity. The calculations were clear. Continued development risked catastrophic consequences." "We could have dominated the quadrant," Grow insisted. "And potentially collapsed it," Xanthar countered. "Science serves the Empire through wisdom, not merely power." Grow turned away. The humans knew. Somehow, they knew exactly what we were planning. "Perhaps," Xanthar acknowledged, "or perhaps they simply recognized the pattern. Either possibility should concern you." In the following cycles, Earth's embassy became a hub of diplomatic activity. Species that had previously kept their distance now sought dialogue, alliance, or simply reassurance. Ambassador Powell navigated these waters with practiced skill, making modest commitments while emphasizing Earth's dedication to Council principles. Commander Foster, meanwhile, coordinated with Earth's expanded military presence, now openly acknowledged, but still strategically ambiguous in its full capabilities. "The Moldovians have offered joint training exercises," he reported during one staff meeting. "Potentially valuable, but also potentially an intelligence-gathering operation. Except with limited parameters," Powell decided. "Show them enough to reassure, not enough to reveal." Dr. Lau's cultural team worked overtime, analyzing reactions across species to what some council members were now calling the Earth assertion. "Fascinating divergence in interpretations," she noted. "Warrior cultures like the Vestan actually respect us more now. Collaborative species like the Paxians express concern but appreciate our restraint in using only positioning, not force." The ripples extended beyond politics. Cultural exchange requests with Earth doubled, then tripled. Art, literature, music. Suddenly human creative expression was in high demand. Even human food, previously considered bland by most council species, became fashionable to sample. "They fear us," Foster observed during a private conversation with Powell. "But they're also intrigued." "Fear and fascination," Powell agreed. "A workable combination, provided we maintain balance." At the Xenological Recorder's station, Zik continued his meticulous documentation. His initial classification revision had sparked debate among his colleagues, some arguing that Earth should remain classified as a potential threat. "Their capability for violence remains," argued one senior recorder. "But so does their restraint," Zik countered, his skin pulsing confident blue. "We must distinguish between capacity and intent." The debate continued until Councillor Dreza herself reviewed the evidence and supported Zik's assessment. "The humans demonstrated precisely what they claimed. They prefer diplomacy, but will act decisively when necessary. This is not fundamentally different from the Council's own approach, merely more efficiently executed. On Earth, news of the Nakari situation sparked both pride and concern. Media outlets celebrated the protection of a developing civilization while questioning the implications of military deployment without public announcement. Was Congress informed? Demanded one legislative leader. Appropriate committees were briefed according to security protocols. The Earth president confirmed. Full disclosure would have compromised operational security. Public opinion polls showed strong support for the Powell Doctrine, with 78% approving protection of developing civilizations and 64% supporting the limited disclosure of military capabilities. 3 cycles after the emergency session, the Nakari installation was completed. A small observation post, minimally staffed, with strict non-interference protocols. Its primary purpose, ensuring no further incursions threatened Nakari development. Ambassador Powell personally visited the installation, accompanied by Commander Foster and a small security detail. It looks like nothing, Foster remarked as they observed the modest facility, a few structures designed to blend into the natural landscape, barely visible even from low orbit. That's the point, Powell replied. Enough to monitor, not enough to influence. From a safe distance, they observed a Nakari settlement, primitive dwellings clustered around a central gathering area, where the new Sky Guardian monument stood prominently. We've already influenced them, Foster noted quietly. They saw our ships. An unavoidable consequence, Dr. Liu acknowledged, joining them at the viewport. But the cultural impact assessment suggests minimal developmental disruption. They've incorporated the sighting into existing mythological frameworks. Let's hope that's all they incorporate, Powell murmured. Back at the council, the Haxan Empire formally censured Gro's faction. The Imperial ambassador presented evidence that the displacement cannon project had indeed violated royal decree, positioning the Empire as victims of internal corruption rather than aggressors. The Empire regrets this unauthorized action, the ambassador declared. We recommit ourselves to Council treaties and acknowledge Earth's protective role in Sector 7. High Counselor Dreza accepted the statement, though Zik noted subtle indications of skepticism in her vocal patterns. The Council was evolving, becoming less willing to accept diplomatic niceties at face value. In his private analysis, Zik wrote, "The human demonstration has catalyzed a transformation in Council dynamics. Species now recognize that treaty enforcement requires not merely agreement, but credible commitment to action. This represents both opportunity and risk, enhancing stability through deterrence while potentially escalating conflicts through militarization." When Vorax reviewed this assessment, his eye stalks converged in concentration. "You believe other species will increase military readiness?" "Some already have," Zik confirmed, displaying intercepted communications from 3 mid-tier council members. Not necessarily for aggression, but to ensure they aren't perceived as exploitable. "The humans have changed the equation," Vorax concluded. "They've merely revealed it," Zik corrected, his skin pulsing thoughtful blue. "The equation always existed. We simply preferred to ignore certain variables." 7 cycles after the emergency session, a formal ceremony marked the adoption of the Powell Doctrine into permanent council law. Ambassador Powell stood before the assembly, her expression composed, but with unmistakable satisfaction. "Earth appreciates the Council's wisdom in formalizing these protections," she stated. "All developing civilizations deserve the opportunity to evolve without external interference, whether benevolent or exploitative." The subtext was clear to all present. Interference would be met with consequences. As the assembly adjourned, High Counselor Dreza approached Powell privately. "Your methods were unexpected, Ambassador, but perhaps necessary." The Council had grown complacent in treaty enforcement. "We noticed," Powell acknowledged. "Earth has always preferred diplomatic solutions. Counselor, we simply ensure those solutions have substance behind them." Your polite mode, Dreza observed with the Paxian equivalent of a smile. A fascinating concept. Later that cycle, Commander Foster received unexpected personal communication from Xanthor. The Imperial Science Division would be interested in exchanging research on non-military applications of quantum barrier technology. The message began. Recent events have created opportunities for scientific cooperation previously constrained by political factors. Foster forwarded the message to Powell with a simple note. It begins. Powell understood immediately. The Haxan Empire, or at least elements within it, were recognizing potential benefits in alliance rather than competition. The political landscape was shifting in ways they had hoped, but couldn't have guaranteed. Dr. Lau's cultural team monitored these developments carefully, mapping relationship networks across species and identifying potential alliance configurations. Her predictions suggested a gradual realignment of council dynamics over the next 20 cycles, with Earth occupying an increasingly central role. Not dominance, she emphasized in her report. Integration. We're becoming a linchpin species, not through conquest but through demonstrated reliability. As these political currents flowed, Zik continued his meticulous documentation. His research had expanded beyond official council sessions to include economic data, cultural exchange patterns, and even linguistic analysis of how different species referred to humans in private communications. The terminology has shifted, he explained to Vorax during one analysis session. Initially, most species used dismissive or cautionary terms. Newcomers, potential disruptors, unproven entity. Now I'm tracking increased usage of stabilizers, enforcers, and even protectors. And the Haxan, Vorax inquired. Their private communications remain guarded, Zik admitted. But even they have shifted from arrogant primitives to calculated strategists. Respect, if reluctant. On Nakari Prime, the observation post maintained its vigilant but unobtrusive watch. The civilization below continued its development, unaware of how close they had come to exploitation or extinction. Seasonal festivals now included elaborate reenactments of the Great Sky Battle, despite the fact that no actual combat had occurred. They've created an entire mythology around a standoff they barely glimpsed, noted Lieutenant Sharma during her command rotation at the installation. Humans have done the same throughout our history, replied her colleague. How many Earth religions began with unexplained lights in the sky? The Nakari civilization would develop in its own time, at its own pace. Whether they would eventually join the galactic community remained an open question, one that would not be answered for generations. 10 cycles after the emergency session, Earth formally expanded its protection umbrella to include 3 additional developing civilizations, each at different evolutionary stages. The Council approved these designations with minimal debate. The Powell Doctrine had become established practice. Ambassador Powell, now serving her final cycle before rotation back to Earth, reflected on this transformation during a private conversation with Commander Foster. When we first joined the Council, we were prepared for antagonism, conflict, perhaps even war, she recalled. Instead, we found bureaucratic indifference, treaties without enforcement, principles without commitment. So we showed them another way, Foster nodded. We showed them humanity, Powell corrected. With all its contradictions. Peaceful, but prepared. Diplomatic, but decisive. Still not fully understood, Foster noted. Perhaps that's for the best, Powell smiled. Strategic ambiguity serves us well. In his final comprehensive report before his own rotation, Ziktox wrote, Humanity continues to defy simple classification. Their capability for destruction remains significant, yet their commitment to protection appears genuine. They have integrated into council structures while subtly reshaping them. They follow rules meticulously until they determine those rules inadequate, then change them through demonstration rather than mere argument. His conclusion, which would be cited in xenological studies for cycles to come, stated, Perhaps what makes humans unique is not their biology, technology, or even their strategic thinking, but their paradoxical nature, their ability to be simultaneously what they appear and something entirely different. Their polite mode is not deception, but a choice repeatedly made, with the constant awareness that alternatives exist. This capacity for behavioral modulation without loss of identity represents an evolutionary advantage in diplomatic contexts that few species can match. As Zik completed this analysis, his skin settled into a serene blue-green. Whatever humanity might become in the centuries ahead, they had already transformed the Council in ways both subtle and profound. The galaxy would never quite be the same. And perhaps, he reflected as he gazed out at the stars, that was precisely what it needed. 50 cycles later, a new xenological recorder would document the first formal contact between Council representatives and Nikari explorers, who had achieved their first interplanetary voyage. Among the artifacts they carried into space was a small stone carving, a stylized representation of Earth vessels protecting their world against formless enemies. When asked about its significance, the Nikari captain replied simply, "It reminds us that we are not alone in the dark. The Sky Guardians watch over all who seek the stars in peace." The human ambassador present for this historic moment smiled but said nothing. Some things required no explanation, only understanding. And humanity had learned, through long experience, when silence spoke more eloquently than words.